This clip is going to study the male reproductive anatomy. So we are going to be looking at the duct system because males, as they produce sperm, the sperm is produced in the testes, but then it has to make its way through a series of ducts. And so this comprises the duct system, which we will go over. And as sperm is also getting ready to be released, it is also going to be joined by secretions from 3 accessory glands. So we're going to focus on these glands as well as the duct system today to understand their role and function in the male reproductive anatomy. So to begin, first off, we know that male sperm production, also known as spermatogenesis, is going to occur in the testes. So the testes are the site of spermatogenesis. And so this is where sperm is produced, and then it's going to make its way through the series of ducts. All right, so as soon as sperm leaves the testes, it's going to next up enter through another organ. And this is the first of the set of ducts or the series of ducts. And so we call this the epididymis. And this epididymis is the site of sperm storage as well as maturation. So site of maturation of sperm and storage. Next up, sperm is going to head up through a long muscular tube that we call the vas or the ductus deferens. The ductus deferens is then going to go past the bladder and it goes posterior to the bladder where it's going to join the secretions of our first accessory gland. So the sperm here that is entering or passing through the vas deferens, sperm actually constitutes 10% of what is released during the male sexual response. And so we need to find the other 90%, and the other 90% of these secretions are going to be products from the male accessory glands. So the first accessory gland that we're going to encounter on this route is the seminal vesicles. And so the seminal vesicles are important because they are going to produce 60% of the secretions. And they produce a very viscous yellow fluid. And this fluid contains things like fructose or other carbohydrates, which is important for the sperm nourishment as well as gives it energy for motility. So sperm nourishment and provides it with the energy needed. Next up, those secretions as well as the sperm are going to enter a small duct right here in pink, and this duct, we call it the ejaculatory duct. Next up, those secretions are going to enter into the first part of the urethra. And so in green here, you'd notice that the urethra is also exiting the bladder because in males, the urethra is a shared organ or structure between the urinary system and the reproductive system. And so this right here is what we call the prostatic urethra. So after the ejaculatory duct, these secretions and the semen or the sperm is going to enter to the first part of the urethra that we call the prostatic urethra. And the reason we call it the prostatic urethra is because this is where the prostate gland is located. So right around here, this is where we see the prostate gland. And so this is actually the second accessory gland that is necessary for the male reproductive system. So let's talk a little bit about this prostate. So the prostate gland is going to produce 30% of the secretions of the male sexual response. So 30% of semen is produced here. And the prostate is going to release milky white secretions that contain things like calcium, phosphate, but also very importantly, the prostate glands produce an alkaline fluid, so a basic fluid, and this is important because it's going to buffer the pH, and so it's going to protect the sperm as they enter the acidic environment of the vagina. So this alkaline or basic fluid is going to protect sperm from the vagina acidity. Okay. Next up, we have the sperm and the semen entering and passing through the urethra. And so the urethra actually has 3 different regions. Prostatic urethra was the first. Then we have a very small region of the urethra that we call the membranous urethra. And then finally, the last and the longest part of the urethra is what we call the spongy urethra. And so this is where the sperm and the semen are going to enter through the penis until they are released outwards. And so what's actually left is just one more accessory gland. And so the third and final accessory gland is actually located right around here. And we call this the bulbourethral gland. So the third accessory gland, we call that the bulbourethral glands. And so the bulbourethral gland is important because it produces a clear fluid. And so this is important for lubricating the head of the penis. Okay? But also more importantly, it actually protects the sperm. And it does that by neutralizing the acidity of this urethra from any residual urine. Because as we mentioned, this is a shared structure between the urinary system and the reproductive system. So this bulbourethral gland is going to flush out and neutralize any acids from residual urine. So it protects the sperm by neutralizing the acidity from residual urine. Okay, so let's go ahead and summarize. So let's go ahead and number the pathway that sperm is going to take from the site of production in the testes all the way it reaches the end or the penis. And so number 1 is going to be the testes. This is the site of sperm production. Number 2 is the epididymis, site of maturation and storage. 3 is the vas deferens or the ductus deferens. 4 is going to be the ejaculatory duct. 5, prostatic urethra. 6, membranous urethra. And 7, spongy urethra, which is going to pass through the penis until it gets ejected right here. Now, we traced it from 1 all the way to 7, but definitely keep in mind that this is also joined, the 10% of the sperm production is also joined by 60% secretions from the seminal vesicles. The second gland is the prostate gland. And finally, the bulbourethral glands. Okay, so now you know the duct system through which sperm and semen is going to pass, and we also looked at the 3 accessory glands that make it all possible.